I'll call the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, July 5th, 2022, here at 3 p.m. to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. Madam Clerk. That is.
Well, over here, including the fire department.
Are they coming for us? Madam Clerk, all 5 commissioners here, our finance officer, our county attorney, and our county manager. So, all in attendance, ma'am. I would remind everybody to please, as mine's about to ring, to silence your mobile devices, and please, as you come forward to speak at the lectern, make sure the red light is on, so click that so we can hear you, and it will be on also for the benefit of the YouTube recording. I want to extend get well wishes to Brenda Carswell. She has been very sick this past weekend, and Commissioner Carswell has been able to get her home today, so we're very blessed for that. So kind of keep her in our thoughts and prayers. And I know Maynard's battled some sickness, and my mother as well, and father. So anyway, please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. Gentlemen, first item of business is approval of the agenda. We've had an opportunity to review that agenda prior. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. All those in favor signify with an uplifted hand. That is 5-0, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item number 3, presentations. We do have 2 presentations today. So first one will be presented by Bart Delahunt, our General Services Director. And Mark, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and members of the board. As you are aware, just over a year ago, Burke County was contracting out our ORC services for our water system. I'm pleased to announce that General Service now has 2 employees that are certified at a level that allows them to serve in that capacity. Assistant Director, Mr. Brian Tart, and our Water Sewer Supervisor, Mr. Burl Cook, are both now certified as Grade B distribution system operators. With your permission, I'd like to present them at the next meeting of the Board of Commissioners to be recognized at your next meeting.
Absolutely. Any questions for Mark?
Mr. Chairman, no question, but an explanation, Mark, for the benefit of the citizens and us who may not know, but what does that actually mean in terms of what is the benefit to the county that they got these?
An ORC is required by each public water system to give assurance to the state and sign off on documents that the water is safe to drink, more or less, and that the system is being operated in a compliant manner. As at that level, Grade B distribution, they can sign off on all the monthly required documentations, and the state recognizes their certification in that capacity.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mark, how much are we paying that company?
That was $12,000 a year it was costing us. Now that they're certified, we won't need to do that.
There,
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Gentlemen, that will remain under item number 1 for presentations at the next meeting. Item number 2 under presentations. This is a placeholder. Gentlemen, you had some information sent by Sherry McJempsey and Eddie McJempsey concerning Brighter House. Should have had a time to review that, but they are on vacation this week, and I didn't think a trip coming to a pre-agenda meeting on July 5th was worth missing a week-long beach trip. So they will come give the presentation to us at the regular scheduled meeting. Any questions, comments? All right, there being none, that will remain under presentation. So we'll move on to scheduled public hearings. This will be presented by Brian Steen, our county manager, for ordinance amending the FY 2022-2023 budget ordinance and public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We had a line written into this year's budget ordinance about the ability to reduce fees for animal services. I think it was a little too restrictive. And some years past, we had a resolution that allowed me to do that as was needed. We may have a large number of animals coming to our care from some unexpected, animal owners or kitten season and you're just overloaded. So we would ask to go back, revert back to the original resolution that we had. I don't know if that's part of your packet, but anyways, that's what that is here for. The 90 days just seemed to be a one-time event, and you may have something come up 6 months later and you've already used that 90-day period. So it gives us flexibility to answer the reality that we may incur. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. You've read the information, heard the presentation. Any questions, comments? All right. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. So we'll move on to presentation number 2, zoning map amendment ZMA 2022-04, public hearing. This will be presented by Ellen Glines, our Deputy County Manager, Planning Director. How are
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Staff received a rezoning request from Nebo Crossing Church for their property they own at 4035 Frank Wisnett Road. That's not their home church. I believe they're actually in Nebo, and this is a second property they own there. The church at this site was started in 1950 and includes a sanctuary building, plus that very well-known 20,000 square foot open-floored Family Life Center gymnasium. And so they are seeking to rezone that from R2, which is a residential zoning district, to the OI, which is office institutional. Now, I understand that this property has been the subject of other rezoning requests in years past. The property is located on Frank Wisnett Road, as I noted, but it's also at the corner of 126. It's about 4.5 miles from the city of Morganton. The existing land use map, if we can scroll down with our maps, it is showing that sort of non-residential use there in blue, but mostly surrounded by single family or vacant parcels used in a residential nature. The next image is the aerial photograph, and they have quite a large parcel there, about 3.5 acres that are used today. A fair bit of it, could be further expansions in the future off to the east of the site. And then the current zoning in the next slide is, actually the next slide is the conformity with the Burke zoning ordinance, which is the comprehensive plan. And we actually are in the process of updating this plan, but this is in that sort of general broad area that was focused on agricultural uses and other support uses. So it wasn't real specific in that that plan that we use today. That future land use area could be, it's called rural agriculture, could be housing and other uses there. This map here is the zoning map, and you can see that area is pretty solidly residential in nature. It's not even our rural mixed use. It's focused on residential. And so surrounding uses include the R1, R2, and R3, all in that subject area. Now, in most zoning codes across the state, church-type uses or schools are often found in a residential zoning district because it's felt to be part and parcel to a residential use. Changing this, though, to OI, office institutional, would open up quite a few other uses in the middle of this neighborhood, which is pretty solidly residential. So that's been staff's reservation about the request. When we have a general district rezoning request, we can't limit, if it was approved, we can't limit what they could do there because we don't have conditional zoning, which could be through agreement, limit the uses on a site. We don't have that in our code today, at least right now. There's a number of things that could happen there besides office or institutional, which might be appropriate. It could be retail or treatment facilities or other drug rehab type of areas there. And we'd be so far from town, we wouldn't be able to really service them very well for the folks who might use that site. So we just can't guarantee what would happen there. When the planning board reviewed the request, quite a few neighbors came out to express their concern, and part of it was increased traffic and just the variety of uses that could happen there that they felt would interfere with their residential enjoyment in their community. And so when the board voted, the planning board voted to recommend, it failed. Recommend to denial is actually what came to you all, and that was passed with a vote of 3-2 to deny it here at the commission. I can answer any questions for you if you have any for me.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, comment or two plus a question, if you will, please. It's kind of a sad day when we see our churches close and everybody appears to want, and this is not a negative comment, just the way it is, they want a party place and a drinking place on the corner instead of a church on each corner. And this was, if I'm not mistaken, this church was at one time the home place of the Wishnet Gospel Singing Group. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that correct?
I believe that to be the case.
Yeah, so it kind of hurts your heart if you get my feelings. What would the owner do with that property? And it may have been in here and I missed it. If it is its own, what did he intend to do with it?
Well, my understanding with the Nebo Church is that it's currently listed for sale and that they would be able to offer it with more eventual uses if it was rezoned. They would be more flexible in what they can offer it towards. A church could go in there, or perhaps a school, but right now other uses are limited there. They're not allowed because of R2 zoning. But if it was changed, they would be able to offer a potential buyer a lot more opportunities for that parcel. So they don't have a end user because it's actually for sale.
The property is currently owned by another church in Marion. Is that? I think that's what you're.
Yes, sir. It's Nebo Crossing Church, which I understand is over in Nebo. So they're not using it actively themselves.
Okay. Do you know if he has a prospective buyer for the property?
Well, I am not 100% sure about that, and I haven't heard any talk in the office here. If I think I would hear about it if we had a prospective buyer. We don't right now.
On your presentation, it indicated where the graveyard was. What happens to the graveyard?
Well, the graveyard, if it's part of this parcel, it would be sold with the land, but it would remain undisturbed, as graveyards are protected in North Carolina. Actually, I think the graveyard is on another parcel to this to date. It's just a little further down 126 to the right there.
So it's not attached to the property or next to the property of the graveyard?
It's next to it, but not attached to the same parcel. Yeah.
In your public hearing, did any attitude or opinion show that if you polled a half-mile radius around that building, what would be the attitude or the majority of them? What would they want done with that building?
That's speculation on my part to answer that, but when you drive through there and you experience the uses there, we really don't have any commercial uses up until you get to the three-way supply. So that's our first commercial corner, and I know a lot of work in Burke County to try to make that successful. I know there's a new restaurant up there now, and we have the gas, and so I don't know if commercial would work, but I don't know who else would want it either. It's kind of open-ended that way.
Does the rumors that they want to make a lounge or party place out of it, does it exist?
I don't know that. I haven't heard that particular one, but just don't know.
Well, that's all for right now. I may ask another question a little later.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. And I will mention one thing that Commissioner Taylor mentioned, you can't speak for, yeah, mentioned a half-mile radius, but the 5 people that did attend were all residents that all were opposed to the rezoning.
Correct, that is
And
correct.
so if you just took that microcosm there and, I would think that would, sounds like a general consensus if you go just by those numbers.
Well, with that, I had 2 calls, personal calls on this property from people up there. And their comments were very strong in that we don't need to search Party Avenue and have police around there all the time that disrupting with noise and crowds. So that's the reason I asked the question about a half-mile radius. It's hard to get a read with 5 people or even 7 people if you add my 2 to it. So, and that's the reason for the question. But I certainly understand the concerns that I am personally getting on the property. Thank you, sir.
Alan, can you just, there's lots of other options in R2, are there not? Or some other options?
It's really focused on residential use, of course, in R2, but, any school or church, another church use could certainly go there. But we're limited for non-residential uses in the R2 zone.
Are there any commercial uses in R2?
No, no commercial. No, we wouldn't have that. And I guess if the church is making a calculation, and I know the property's been for sale for, it's probably over a year, that if they had this change, they could attract another use, but right now, we just can't limit. We're not in a position where the county can even negotiate with them to limit what that end user would be once that, the OI is placed on the track. Now, if we did have conditional zoning, which could be helpful in situations like this where we really want to be specific, I could work on that for a future date. It would be an amendment to the code, but it would allow developer, property owner, and commission to negotiate potential uses that could be satisfactory. Maybe an office use or a doctor's office or something could be something helpful up there. I don't know, but right now I can't limit them to that today.
What about home office type use?
Home office? If it was residential, yeah, you can do home offices in your residence, but it's a component of the home and doesn't overtake the home. It's not a business per se. It's sort of meant to be secondary to the residential character in a residential district. And this 12,000 square foot building, or whatever, actually 20,000 square foot building is what throws it off. At one point in the past, there was a distribution business. Do you all remember that? It was food distribution, and it was definitely not church related, and it was definitely bordering into that other kind of commercial zone, and actually some zoning action was taken on that to close that down because it wasn't properly zoned for that.
Mr. Chairman, in its present zoning, would it qualify for a huge daycare center?
I'd have to look into that. I can't remember if we have, that would be quite a large daycare center. I think it would, I believe our zoning code would cap that number, and if you're filling a 20,000 square foot building with a very large daycare center, at some point you're a commercial use. Would be my guess on that. So we would need a commercial zone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan was kind of curious about the vote. Were the 5 folks that spoke, were they all residents of the community, or was several of them, maybe somebody that had been in front of this board before asking for rezoning?
I believe the 5 that were there were neighbors. That's the understanding I got from staff.
Nebo Crossing did not have to buy that church. It was given to them, correct?
I believe that's correct.
So for the sale, even if it wasn't rezoned, I mean, we're talking about a church building, and I think the building out back is probably the key to selling that. So they could still sell it, no matter what the rezoning is.
Yeah.
Maybe the premise is if it was zoned a little bit different, they could make a little bit more money if they sold it.
Right.
Okay. So the same, I think if I remember correctly, when it came in front of this board before, that a entrepreneur had come in and given money to help the church out when the Whistons were there, if I remember correctly. So, and then I think the same guy has gone to Nebo Crossing now and has done the same deal with them by just giving them the property. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I don't know, I don't have the entire background on that, transactional kind of who was involved, but I understand that. I've heard a similar story to that. I believe you're on the right track with that, what happened there.
But I'm curious about the vote. Was the vote because of the 5 people that was there, or you have a personal feeling? I hate to ask that question of why the denial was there. Was it just a denial because there was going to be more traffic?
Well, I believe it was because of the unknowns in the OI. We couldn't guarantee, the doubt was cast where we just can't, there's a wide range of uses in OI, and some of them might fit well in a neighborhood setting, but others might be trouble, and they just didn't want to welcome that into that neighborhood. When I was reviewing the list myself, I was a little concerned with some of the things that could occur there, and even though we want to offer these things in our community broadly, they wouldn't necessarily fit right there at that spot, since there's no other services and other things if you had a use that might not be a good fit in the neighborhood.
But they would still be selling a church, and then the building in the back that could be made about into anything, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Other questions, comments?
Thank you.
All right, Alan, thank you, sir. Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We'll move on to consent agenda items. And this will be presented, Western Piedmont Council of Government Area Agency on Aging Home and Community Care Block Grant for FY 2022-2023, presented by Tina Miller, Area Agency on Aging Director. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is a mouthful.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I come before you again to present on our Home and Community Care Block Grant for fiscal year 23. As a reminder, the Home and Community Care Block Grant provides funding for services for older adults age 60 and better in Burke County. You appoint the Burke County Council on Aging as your group to make recommendations about this funding. For this next fiscal year, well, I guess it's this fiscal year, we are in July, we have $660,476 for home and community care block grant services for this fiscal year. This is an increase from last year, $56,977, so we're delighted about that. You should have in front of you the summary for the Burke County Council on Aging for the 9 services that they are recommending for use of this funding. We also put out services for bid that are provided by a for-profit agency. We do that every 2 years, and so that was part of this review by the Council on Aging as well, to review bids that were received for in-home aid services and medical transportation services. The group chose to continue service recommendation with the same providers that we've had, so there's no changes in providers or services. So we're asking you to approve the Home and Community Care Block Grant for state fiscal year 2022-2023 recommendations, which include the services funded, services allocations, and the provider designations as presented by the Burke County Council on Aging, in addition to signing the agreement for services between Burke County and the Western Piedmont Council of Governments for us to manage these services and reimburse your service providers every month.
Gentlemen, you've heard the presentation and, had the materials beforehand. Are there any questions or comments for Tina?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. JR, in any of these entities where you got multiple counties or cities, towns involved, should they not also be listed in that motion, since it is it involves a considerable amount of money, $666,000?
Well, the block grant is specific to Burke County, so Burke County would only be the party that would have authority to guide the AAA on that.
Well,
So we're fine.
Okay, Tina, is all of the other cities that's part of that park, are they not responsible for their part of the funds?
Is there a specific one you're talking about? I'm not sure which county, is it a provider you're talking about, or, I'm not following your question.
Morgan City, Town of Valdez, Rutherford College.
Oh, well, these are the funds for the entire county. They're yours to distribute and provide whatever services for older adults you want to. Again, you appoint the Burke County Council on Aging to make those decisions. The only funds that, you're really having to put into this is the match for the county agencies that provide services. And for Burke County, the only county agency is the Burke County Senior Services that provides congregate meals, home delivered meals, and senior center operations.
Okay.
The other providers make their own match of their services, but these services are provided to citizens in all of Burke County. And then we do this in every county in the entire state and the entire country. For my part, just Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba. Thank goodness.
So in this situation, Brian, we do pay the match, the 10%?
I believe.
Just for the one county agency, and I think that's part of their budget.
Yes. What Tina said is correct. Yeah, we have funds that come through senior services every year for this, for the nutrition services and senior activities and senior center operations support. But the other agencies get their funding directly through the Western Piedmont.
Okay. Thank you, Tina.
Other questions?
Questions, comments, gentlemen? Well, Tina, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. We'll move on to item number 2 under consent agenda, ARP Foothills Higher Education HVAC replacements. Brian, our senior fiscal analyst, is going to present this one. How are you today, sir?
Good. How are you gentlemen today?
Good.
Good. You have the agenda abstract in front of you. This is part of the original projects you all approved back in October of last year. It was part of our ARP funding. A big portion of that was for HVAC projects, HVAC projects. This project is to replace 11 of the rooftop units at the Foothills Higher Education Center. The RFP was issued on May 20th. We had 2 businesses that submitted bids, and Triangle Contractors came in as the lowest responsive bidder. The initial estimate of the project, what we got when we first put the funding before you, was about $250,000. After the bids came in and looking, obviously this is about a little more than 6 months after that was done, we came in at the price of $382,500. Now that obviously is a little bit more than the original estimate. But the good news is with the HVAC projects that were approved in the ARP, there is funding available because we basically approved some big pots of money in ARP. HVAC, some general services, some from infrastructure, some EMS programs. So in that HVAC pot of money, there were several projects. 2 of those projects are, one of them is the boiler replacement at the sheriff's office, and the other one is the chiller replacement at the courthouse. Now, there's a good chance at least one of those projects will be covered with funding from other projects. So when we talk about what's going to happen with the future of the old jail and the sheriff's office over there, that may fall into, the funding for that project may fall into that funding. Same thing with the courthouse. We have those SCIF funds coming. Some of that, and that project is being relooked at is, do we really need a new chiller or not? So those funds have not been obligated or committed to that yet, so those funds are available in that money, and so no additional fundings need to be approved. It's just to approve us to allow the county manager to sign a contract with Triangle Contractors to start the process.
Gentlemen, you have an opportunity to listen to the presentation, questions, comments?
That's a big ounce, Brian.
It is.
It's 40% increase in, what, 9 months?
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I know those original prices, when those original bids were done, I think those were done by General Services. So I'm not sure if those are just rough estimates or, those were using specific quotes. I think that was just getting a rough idea of what the cost could be. Because, especially a project of this nature, a lot of companies aren't going to want to put in too much effort unless they know that they're going to have a chance to get in the contract. So, you ask a vendor to put in a lot of work and, okay, well, now you put in all this work, now we got to send it out to bid. So they put in a lot of work and now they may not get the contract. So I think part of that has to do with, and also with the supply chain, HVAC units, talking with any vendor, it's going to be a couple months before they can even get them here. It's just, they're not available, they're not there. So, but I did speak with them today, and that price is obviously still a valid price.
So the additional 132,000 is coming from general funds?
No, when you approved your original ARP projects, you approved some big pots of money. So in HVAC, you approved $650,000. That was going to be used for some replacement of units at the libraries, replacement units at the Ag Center. There was the project at the Sheriff's Office, the project at the courthouse. So some of those projects are going. Some of those are in the process of getting the bids confirmed so we can start them. But like I said, the two biggest ones are the boiler replacement and the chiller at the courthouse. The Sheriff's Office was $115,000 estimated. The courthouse was $120,000. So like I said, with those other projects, if the funding comes from a different source, that frees up that ARP money that will then allow us to cover this overage for this one project, and it's not using any additional ARP funds that you all haven't already approved. So we're not changing the overall total of what was already been approved. We're just kind of reallocating the funds to cover this one project.
Okay. This question may not be to you, so since we're taking 132 more thousand out of that fund, does that affect Margaret or anybody? Does that affect other projects we have already approved? Will it take money away from something, or we have that much extra in the pot?
No, sir. What Brian's explaining is $615,000 was approved for HVAC projects. We gave you a breakdown of what we thought those projects would be. However, that breakdown has changed slightly in that the 11 units are now estimated significantly more, but we're looking at the courthouse funding shifting to the SCIF funds that the state provided us for courthouse renovations. So there's still, it's not changing the $615,000 of ARP that's approved for HVAC. We're just redelegating within that pot.
Okay. Well, the only other remaining question I guess is do we have one of those entities that's participating, and I don't have them before me, but what are they, 7, 8, something like that? That was redone in less than 5 years. We have an air conditioning project that's been done for one of those buildings that we might meet the budget.
I don't know what list of agencies you're talking about.
Somebody named all the projects that's in there.
There were 2 bidders on this project.
But there were multiple air conditioners, right?
Multiple what?
Hold on a second.
There's 11 rooftop units in that project.
There's 11 in this
Yeah, at the
project.
foothills of higher education, there's 11 rooftop units. I think that's what you were asking.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, somebody without air conditioning today will really feel it. So that answers the question. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Brian? Just for general information, just for anybody that happens to be listening, just remind us what the SCIF funds are for. We may know, but others may not, because I think they understand ARPA and some of the others, because those are pretty commonly used. But SCIF, a lot of folks don't know what that is.
The SCIF is a separate allocation of funding that came from the state. It was done through the state budget process, and the state very much just said, they gave us a figure, they gave us, Burke County was allocated so much funds, which is different from ARP, which was done through the federal recovery plan. So this is money, these ARP funds are the funds that we have so many hoops we have to go through, so many requirements we have to meet, report on them. The SCIF funds have their own level, but they came directly from the state, so there's not as many federal regulations attached to them. So there's a lot more flexibility with SCIF funds, how to spend that money than they do with the ARP funds. The SCIF fund is against money that's completely coming from the state. There's no county match, there's no county portion. It's just money that's been allocated to the county, and the county gets to decide how to spend it.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Brian. Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to our good friend Alan Wood from BDI. He's got several. First one is a authorization request for One North Carolina for Unix Packaging. And good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Apparently it's too hot to be playing golf because you're here.
I think I have to get that misconception. I don't play that much, so, but it is hot today. I will. What we're asking is for a request that would come from the county to do what they would call a letter match, or releasing funds for a 1NC grant that has already been approved. To give you a little background on it, why this is necessary, when you have a larger project like this, the 1NC would go ahead and be approved, but some of the work that is being done by the company gets delayed. So therefore, the first payout for this grant locally would not occur until March of '23. So they had to do the project improvements. They put 4 of the 5 lines in that they had projected to do, but because of the timing on that, the 1NC is ready and they've met the obligations to receive 3/4 of that grant. But per the 1NC guidelines, unless the county approves them to do so, they won't release it until the local match is done. The local match will be covered with the first grant payment that would be due in March. They have invested roughly $24.8 million to this point in time. So the first payout by the city and county would be roughly $180,000, which would more than cover the required 25% match. So we have verified that they have created and held 160 of the 203 jobs already. So they're over 75% of the way to their job goals, and they're 40% above what was projected for their local investment, which when they put the second line in, it's probably going to bump them over $30 million with local investment. So we verified this. We've got the documents. Commerce would be sending the form that we would need for the county manager to execute. So what we want to do, we're just essentially forwarding and getting this grant paid out to them 9 months earlier than it would be.
Thank you, Alan. Questions, comments for Alan? Absolutely. You did a good job on that one. Questions up?
Thank you.
Without objection, this item will remain on the agenda, so you're still up, IDF Sewer Project, Burke Business Park.
Okay. We have already received the funds from Golden Leaf to do the water extension that's needed for the proposed project there. What we did then, once we had that, is applied to the IDF fund, which is Infrastructure Development Fund, to help us with the needed sewer extension. BDI did a pre-application. It went through the Rural Infrastructure Authority and was approved on June 16th. The amount of the request was $503,330. There is a 25% local match, which would be $125,833. When we did the water tank at that time, there was a local agreement put in place that allowed any match funds that were required for additional work to also be funded by a project to cover that match. So when the first building goes up, the first taxes that are collected go to the county to offset any match that is required for grant funding. So we took care of that. We established that we did the water tank, knowing that there would be some additional work needed. We went ahead and extended that agreement to cover additional projects. So we don't have to go back and get a second local agreement or a second addendum to that local agreement completed. What I'm asking for today is submit the final case so we can go ahead and get this to be a separate interlocal agreement as far as the building of the line and then how that process between the county. To allow us to go ahead, the county to go ahead with our grant writer and submit that application so we can get that approved. And in the meantime, we can be working on the interlocal agreement as we can try to complete everything else that's needed on this project.
Alan, thank you. Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Alan, let me ask you one question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're set up to provide water for other companies that move in. How about sewer? Or what?
This should
cover everything?
Yeah. This one, the line goes by the second largest pad, and so it will be ready to build out.
Fantastic.
And just another thing, you didn't ask, there is money from ARC that will also take the road down to that pad, and that's supposed to happen later this fall.
All right, thanks, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Alan, I was just thinking, we mentioned a sewer project, but it doesn't give me any idea of what that sewer project is. Are we connecting to City of Morganton, or are we developing our own?
The sewer line, when the land was purchased, or somewhere between then, was extended to the lot lines of the industrial park. This would, and it is City of Morganton line, this would extend that line up to the proposed building line, or the lot line of the new building that is to be built.
So as other entities build or develop out there, we'll also have to be adding lines?
Well, the nice thing about it is this line is going to run right up through the middle of the park. So it takes care of this, which is 3 lots, 24 point some acres, 25, I don't remember exactly. But it goes by the largest remaining lot. And so it's immediately on that lot line, so we don't have to have an extension there. And it's a very short distance, only a few hundred feet from that from this building that's to be built to that other pad there on the corner. So this, I mean, there could be a little bit more, but this line pretty well takes care of everything that's needed moving forward for the park. Or it should.
Multiple property owners will gain benefit from doing this work.
Any other building that goes in, well, it takes sewer on out further, because there are some other large tracts out there that this gets them closer for access.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Alan, you mentioned that second, the largest remaining pad after this. How many square feet can fit on that? Just
Thank
out of-
you. Roughly 200,000.
Okay,
We have a virtual building that's 100 expandable, depending on parking, to 175 to 200,000. If they wanted to cross dock it, it's probably 175. If a single dock's probably 200.
any other questions, comments? Thank you, sir. Well then, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 5, Madam Clerk, this is appointment to Child Protection, Child Fatality Prevention Team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to appoint Chris Norman to seat number 5 at large to the Child Protection, Child Fatality Prevention Team to complete the remainder of a 3-year term ending April 30th, 2025.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 6, appointment to the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to reappoint Maurice Beam to the Parks and Recreation Commission, seat number 10, Oak Hill, to complete the remainder of a 3-year term ending March 31st, 2025.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? If not, this item will remain, without objection, will remain on the consent agenda. So we'll move on to item number 7, removal from and appointment to the Regional Aging Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to remove Jerry Propes from the roster. He has served the maximum number of terms allowed, and we would like to thank him for his service. And it is to appoint Rosie O'Hearn to seat number 3 to complete the remainder of a 2-year term ending June 30th, 2024.
Gentlemen, questions, comments? There being none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 8, Madam Clerk, resolution updating plat review officer for the town of Hildebrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request to remove Todd Justice, who was with the COG, and appoint Town Administrator Logan Shook as the new plat review officer for the town of Hildebrand.
Gentlemen, questions, comments regarding this item? Then, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we'll move on to item number 9, Tax Department Tax Collection Report for June 2022. And this will be presented by our Tax Administrator, Mr. John Bridgers. How are you today, sir?
Doing well, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to be here, members of the board. The tax collection report for July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. Property taxes collected year-to-date was $45,500,025, which is 101.22% of what was budgeted. Motor vehicle tax collected same period, $5,169,170.21, which is 99.41%. Current year taxes collected $50,716,197.46, which is 101.03%. Delinquent taxes, we have collected $740,966.33, which is 105.85%. And late listing penalties, we've collected $393,025.63, which is 124.77%. So the total tax levy, we have collected year-to-date $45,547,027.25, which is 98.38%. Any questions?
Gentlemen, questions, comments? And without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll Continue on, release refund report for June 2022.
The tax release, refunds and releases for June, we have released a net release of $308.27. And for vehicle tax system, we refunded $228.86. Any questions?
Gentlemen, questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have a question. How can we, under a business that's closed, am I reading this correct, that Java Planet closed in 2011 or 2012? And we're just now catching that, or somebody just now reported it?
Yeah, that's what happened, is that it's just out there. We can go back 10 years to collect taxes, and it's just, nobody's bothered to let us know they're not in business. So that's why that comes about.
I know I've asked this question before. Do we think there's a lot of businesses out there like that? Is it significant monies, or it's just out there?
I don't think there's significant money out there, because these tend to be smaller businesses which don't have a high tax liability to begin with, but they are out there. And one of the things that I want to start doing is, because there's probably businesses out there that we're not collecting taxes on, is to start looking at those that may be out there. They're not listing their taxes, so we're not collecting taxes for them.
I hope you do that. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for John? All right.
One last thing is, you will be getting greetings from the tax office probably later this week, end of the week, first of next week.
Thank you, sir. Well, gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the consent agenda. We'll move on to item number 6. This will be items for decision. There are 2 of those. First being RFQ for architectural engineering services for EMS Base 1. This will be presented by Brian Steen, our county manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, I am trying to run things parallel so that we're maximizing what we can in every day that we have to pass. And what I'd like to do is, we've issued an RFQ, request for qualifications for architectural firms that would be interested in possibly trying to win the contract to do the design work for EMS Base 1. And we will be getting those responses back in short, and we'll come to you at the board meeting with a recommendation from the responses we receive as to who we believe would be the best one, and ask the board to advise us, allow us to move forward and negotiate a contract that we could possibly bring back in August, September at the latest. And again, we're trying to parallel so that we're not losing any time if we can avoid it.
Gentlemen, questions, comments for Mr. Steen? All right, without objection, this item will remain on the items for decision. Item number 2, appointments to the Animal Advisory Board. This will be presented once again by Madam Clerk Kay Drone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is time to make the annual appointments and reappointments to the Animal Advisory Board. Seat number 1 is a 501c3 rescue or foster. It's currently occupied by Gwen Hood, who represents a Better Life Animal Rescue. Seat number 3 is for a Board of Health member, occupied by Gwen Stevens. And seat number 5 is law enforcement. That is occupied by Jeff Robinson. Seat 7 is vacant. It's for an at-large pet owner. And we are asking that you reappoint Gwen Hood, Gwen Stevens, and Jeff Robinson for 2-year terms ending July 31st, 2024. And to make an appointment, right now we have 4 excellent candidates for you to choose from at your regular meeting for seat 7, and that term is also for a 2-year term ending July 31st, 2024.
Gentlemen? questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, a couple, if you will, Madam Clerk. Is there any way that these, I'm thinking of one of the comments I passed out at our last regular meeting, what gets measured gets done. Is there any way of, I guess a good way to say it, track performance of those on the boards? And are they all attending? Are they all participating? Do we need to be looking at another one? Da-da-da-da-da.
While I don't have the specific data, I do attend those meetings fairly regularly, and they are well attended. I know, is Jeff still a captain, or is he changed?
Yeah, I believe he's a captain.
Yeah. Captain Robinson sometimes is called away, for work duty, but no, it's very well attended.
Okay, all right. So the board itself is satisfied with the performance and with the people they have on board?
Well, I can't speak for the board, but I believe that they are.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Of course, this might be probably not a good question to ask, but maybe, I don't know. You got 4 good candidates. Is there a preference from the Animal Advisory Committee of a certain candidate or no?
Not at this time, but I could certainly reach out to them and see if they'd like to.
I didn't know if there was a consensus that, this person or that person, because
I know a couple of these applicants, some have veterinarian experience. You might want to take that into consideration, but they all are pet owners. Some volunteer with other animal-related nonprofits or rescues. So it's really going to be a tough decision.
it's a good problem to have 4 strong candidates, because we're trying to beg, borrow, and steal to get other volunteers in other agencies. So,
But I would certainly be glad to contact the chair and vice chair, see what their thoughts are.
please, any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda. Gentlemen, I would remind all of you to submit your reports to Kay before our next meeting, which will be July 19th at 6 p.m. Is there any other discussion items, gentlemen? All right, then, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify with uplifted hand. Motion carried 5-0, Madam Clerk. Thank you, everybody.